Welcome to the Second Bite Podcast, where we talk with top entrepreneurs and CEOs about creating valuable companies through creative transactions. Now, let's get started with the show.
Welcome back to the Second Bite Podcast. We have a tremendous episode today. Robert Glazer from Acceleration Partners is my guest. Robert, I'm thrilled to have you with us.
Good to be here.
Yeah, man. Listen, as we get started, I want to first thank our sponsors, the people at Fiscal Advocate, Sean Morris' shop. They do a great job helping agencies get their finances in a place where they can understand and make business decisions from them. So thanks to Fiscal Advocate. Robert, you are the founder and used to be CEO. Now you're the executive chairman of Acceleration Partners. Can you just, by quick intro, tell me a little bit what does AP do and who do you do it for?
Sure. Yeah. Examples are always easier, but AP is the largest independent global partner marketing firm, and we really help companies who are specializing in partner programs, whether that's affiliate and more recently influencer and some aspects of referral and otherwise. But instead of search or social, these are the large scale partnership oriented programs that make up about 10 to 20% of e-commerce revenue. And they get less visibility, but they are kind of equally as big as some of these other channels. And we're really good at running these for large enterprise global brands.
What's the part? It would seem like it's logical because we all get our stuff on Instagram and the rest, and I'm sure everybody listening has bought something off of that. But it must be pretty difficult to get to that point of making it look easy.
Yeah, I mean, nothing's easy. If you've bought something from an influencer or a list of the top best things, or a mom blogger, or a product decision site, or whatever, all of those companies are getting compensated through a mechanism called affiliate marketing, which is instead of getting paid for a click or an impression, they get a percentage of the sale. It's tracked, and they get a sort of percentage from the sale. So it's like having like a whole bunch of free agent resellers in your program wrapped with some technology. You could have 10 or 100 or thousands of partners, and what enables it is these software platforms like Commission Junction and Awin and Impact or otherwise. And so we're kind of a large partner to those software platforms and help people build and set up and run programs using those tools and networks.
And, we've known each other now for a while. And when I think about you, I think about Mike Mothner at W Promote, and I think about Grayson LaFrenz at Power Digital because of the type of success that you've had. So for anyone listening, there's 2 other podcasts that you can go back and check out. But you started Acceleration Partners in 2007. Can you take me through the early years? I guess there's about a dozen years before you wound up partnering with private equity. But can you take me through the early days of that?
Yeah. Someone asked me on a podcast, I think a year ago, like, how did you decide to start your agency? And I stopped for a minute and I laughed, and they were like, what's so funny? I was like, I don't know anyone who decided to start an agency. I think you find yourself like, I actually had left my last job. I was doing some consulting. I understood affiliate from the publisher side. I was actually helping this brand called Tiny Prints and realized that like I kind of was an affiliate of theirs, and it was killing it with it. And I was like, look, like we're doing this all with coupon codes and stuff. I said to the founder, you could do this as sort of more of an official affiliate program. He's like, I don't have any time or know how to do that. You want to look into it for me. And so I looked into it, and I kind of learned about the industry, and I questioned a bunch of the stuff I saw. And we ended up building a very content heavy program for them that focused on mom, baby bloggers, kind of early influencers. And it did really well. And Tiny Prints sold for several $100 million to Shutterfly. And the affiliate program was a big part of the company. And I had kind of set it up and grown it and brought in some people. And then when that happened, as happens often in Silicon Valley, people go on other companies and they'd call and they say, hey, can you help us do the Tiny Prints affiliate program? Because I think we got the same problem over here. This is all coupons and loyalty and crap. And we want the content oriented program. And so the folks from One Kings Lane called and the folks from somewhere else called. And then I started hiring some people and they started helping. And then somehow I woke up and I was running an agency.
And so, and I'll fast forward so we can get into what I think is the good stuff. So if I fast forward 10 years, 2017-ish or so, you guys are now doing somewhere around 20 million-ish of revenue. You're really nicely profitable. Life is good.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there, you said to yourself, either I can be bigger or I want to ring the register on some of this, or take me first through the awareness part of maybe there's something I should do here from an investor perspective.
Yeah, I tend to a little bit believe like companies kind of grow or they die, and particularly in marketing and agency, like you don't want to be pretty stagnant. And so we were continuing to grow, and every time you double, I think it has a whole new set of implications, both from the sort of leadership side and then the fiscal side, financial side, and when you're growing. I don't need to tell you, there's a difference between what your P&L says and your tax return and your bank account. And when you're actually growing an agency 20 or 30% a year over 10 years, like it just sucks up all the cash and it keeps going back in. So, and then you get to this problem. So you get to sort of that size and, imagine if your rich uncle like bequeathed you a $5 million house. You're like, oh, great, $5 million house. Then you get in there, but then the furnace goes and it's 20 grand and the taxes are 80 grand. And so when you're self-fund a company and an agency and still growing and it gets to that size, like it starts to get a little scary, in terms of, I had I think a $1 or $2 million equity line that was a personal guarantee that was sort of our safety net, and that went from covering a year of payroll to a month of payroll, years later. So I had been thinking in my mind, like, look, I think we can double this again. I think we can do that, but man, like again, I'm going to be that's a lot of money. That's a lot of risk on me. Obviously, everything's kind of not only tied up but being constantly reinvested. At that growth rate. And somewhere around 2018, 2019, on the advice of some coaches and stuff, I really thought about, I did sort of a one pager, like, hey, like this is the type of deal or partner that would be perfect for me. Like here, I think I'm pretty clear what I want to do. And again, it also got to a size business where me running it wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do every day. And I think a lot of business owners don't separate their ego enough to figure out like, okay, what does the business need and what do I want to do? And for multiple times I had answered, yeah, I want to be the 5 million revenue CEO and the 10 million and the 20 million. But now I was like, do I want to be the 50 or 75 million revenue CEO? I'm looking at what that job is. It's a lot of meetings. It's a lot of people. It's not the new product discovery and the stuff that, creating something new that I like to do. So all those things were in the back of my head. I really wasn't sure, but I had kind of sketched out this kind of perfect partnership scenario. And then 2020 happened and COVID hit. And, we lost like either 30% of our business on it or 30% of clients, this first couple of weeks saying, yeah, we'll pay you in like 6 months. And I mean, it was scary. And eventually we recovered. The channel did really well. And actually the back half of the year, ended up being pretty good after things coming to an absolute halt. But I think that solidified for me that, yeah, this is like, this is the uncle's house. Like I don't, people are saying, well, what do we want to do next year? And I'm like, well, I don't, in some cases, I'm like, I don't want to grow. Like I want to harvest now. Like I've been doubling down for 10 years, but that wasn't fair to a team that wanted to grow. And so we had talked to some partners. I knew if we did something like that, I wanted to be a platform. I wanted to be our team. I wanted to be our culture. I wanted to be the growth, and the sort of stars all aligned for us to help, find the right partner once everything stabilized and really kind of service all of those different needs that needed to be met.
So from stuff that I've seen online, you were roughly 5-ish million of EBITDA on 28 million of rev. Plenty to be a platform is the point that I'm getting to. So and I want to tie this into your comment about being the CEO or not, because I know a lot of guys look at it when they're running it and they say, can I do it? Can I be the CEO of a 25 or 30 or a $50 million business? They less often ask the question, am I the most qualified guy to be the CEO of a 30?
Or do I want to, right? I think we all can. The question is, again, do you want to? Is it the thing you really want to do? Like, that's where the ego stuff gets really hard.
And so now you're going to go to the market to find private equity to support you. Yeah. And as you do that, do you do that with the mantra that I'm going to be the CEO and I want to take this as far as we can with the private equity group?
So interestingly, like I had already had the transition plan in place with Matt. Well, we'd had the discussion before we started.
I'm sorry.
With Matt, who was the president at the time.
Okay.
So we had already had that process, and actually we were very honest with people, and you don't want to bait and switch. It's not a good way to start off a relationship. And so I was honest with people as we went out, like that was the plan. The plan was for Matt to take over and me to sort of move into the chairman role. And I thought it was the right thing for everyone. And I actually think if you're a private equity firm, one of your biggest risks in these deals is always, hey, I've got this founder that's going to be here forever. Like, they're going to have some money. Like, how are they going to stay interested? And so I actually think it was an opportunity, because that's always a risk for someone, a hungry number two to come in to be CEO and to have, an opportunity to lead and have a substantial piece of equity, in that next phase. And so, yeah, that was part of all of our discussions that was the plan. And we kind of executed it a year after the deal, which was sort of a 2-year transition process. And we were moving the management team around, and Matt and I were doing a lot of things behind the scenes to make that happen. In fact, when we announced it to the team, we said, if you kind of look like I don't have anyone that reports to me anymore, I haven't been running their meetings, like we've kind of been doing this like for a while. It's not a big shift.
So now you were the founder. Were you the 100% owner of the business too?
We didn't have any outside investors, but we had other employee owners.
Gotcha. And so this was an opportunity, knowing Mountain Gate, but probably anyone, this is an opportunity to get for you to get your rewards, but also to get wider ownership amongst your management team. Was that a motivator?
Yeah. I mean, again, that was a motivator when we got into the type of partnership that we were looking for. And again, a lot of people say that, but then the deal structures, I was talking to someone this week whose deal structure doesn't really match up to that. And they and their investors have different preferences. So yeah, I like I said, I had given out, we had a program beforehand. But in terms of picking the partner and what that looked like, yes, that was a major motivation for me, was how that team could do kind of over the next 5 years.
So I want to talk a little bit about that process. First question there is, you had some ideas in your mind and were told certain things. Here's what it's going to be like when you go into the process. Everything from the people you'll meet to the time it'll take and on and on. What were the biggest misconceptions that you learned from before you started to kind of when you were in the process that surprised you the most?
What the biggest misconceptions were?
Yeah, or what just surprised you? What kind of once you got into it and we're starting into this process, what were you surprised by or unprepared for?
I'll say I didn't have a ton of surprises, and that's because I spent a lot of time before that seeking out the people who were on the road ahead of me, the David Rudinskys, the Ben Kirschners, like lots of people who had already done what I want to do, and getting all of the information from them. So we actually
for a second, Robert. So you just called those guys and said, "Here's who I am. Here's what I'm thinking about. Can you take an hour with me?"
I had known them. We had conversations. There was partnership stuff. There was even like, oh, maybe they were acquirers of AP. So I knew them, but the people in the agency know each other. And so, I reached out, had coffee, picked their brains. People have gone through this, want to help other people. I have several people that I've helped through similar processes. And, and some of them had multiple different transactions already. And so I got the good and the bad about investors and bankers and who to work with and who not to work with. And I think, look, the biggest surprise for me was just how brutal due diligence is, like how physically and mentally exhausting it is. Because we also had a 45-day period, which you can't probably even do anymore. But our process was sort of quick because we settled on a banking partner. And again, I feel like, I see so many people who are trying to do this themselves and all this stuff. I'm like, you got one chance at this. And then we had a couple inbounds that were interested and had already done some work. And so we did a sort of small process and we really liked them. Like we had 3 and they really liked them. And so we actually did a pretty small reach out. And, in the first month or 2 of doing that, we had already developed a pretty good relationship with Mountain Gate, and they kind of jumped ahead and said, we want to do this deal. And we had realized that they were really the right partner for us at that point.
How did you realize that? Because of the one pager that you did before?
Yeah. So a couple things. It matched up to the one pager almost exactly, in terms of what we were looking for. Just the reputation of the team and the partners and knowing the Tenuity deal or the lead SEM deal, and sort of they were in the year kind of two of that. I had done some reference calls, and also like their terms matched the spirit of partnership, right? In terms of they are very proud of large equity incentive program for the management team. Everyone has the same security, like a lot of the things that I could just see in the market. I actually ended up then having some different experiences after that with different businesses. I feel like we got lucky, like, because I saw more problems. I saw the more traditional problems with some other deals I was involved with after that, where I was an investor or otherwise in some businesses that sold. So I felt like I got very lucky because I feel like Mountain Gate and the way they do business and everything up front in the LOI, it's not the norm.
You worked with Trent?
Trent and Bennett, yeah.
So just as a quick plug, Trent has been on a couple episodes of the podcast in the PE Insight series, and he shares a bunch about their philosophy, how it works, what you're referencing as one share class, not something special for the investors, how we want everybody to participate, just on and on and on. So if people want to hear from Trent, you can.
Yeah, and the basic premise is kind of simple, like, which is, everyone who rolls in has the same asset class, so no one can do better or worse than the other person. The management team is given a considerable amount of equity, more than I've seen any other investor give, and I won't get into all the details. Yeah.
Can I say?
Well, yeah, if he says it, yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
I mean, oftentimes they do 15%.
Yeah, 15%.
Which a lot of groups will say we do up to 10%. And it's...
Yeah, the founders don't get any. Someone was just telling me about a situation where the founders got it and they were super annoyed. It's like, you've got your rollover. And so it all goes to them. And it really fully participates at a 2x level, which is a very reasonable level, like for the investors to get a return on their money. And so what you're saying is like, look, here are typically people who are not going to start their own business, not going to go work at Facebook and have that kind of equity. And so this is their chance over, 3, 4, 5 years to earn a meaningful, return that, gets that vacation house they want, pays off their kids' college education, the things that are important to them. And that was sort of what was exciting. And then, if these people all do well, which is designed around, then the investors do well and the preferred shareholders do well. So it really is an aligned structure. And I just was on a call with someone yesterday who's dealing with a thing where his investors have a preference and it's been building up for a while. And, it's a big nut. And their return's not the same as their return, and it's going to be difficult.
Yeah. Let me ask this before I get into the transaction a little bit. How would you instruct somebody to do that one pager? What are the questions that they should ask? What are the things that should be on that one pager that you did?
Yeah. And honestly, for me, it wasn't necessarily as much quantitative. It was like, what do I want? Right. Like I wanted our culture, our business. I wanted these growth opportunities. I wanted to be able, to do what I wanted to do and sort of, step out of that day-to-day role. And I wanted these certain opportunities for our team. And so there were a bunch of, qualitative things. And I think, obviously you're going to have quantitative goals too. And I think it's important to write this stuff down. I can't tell you the amount of, look, you can do a deal too early. I mean, quote unquote, but you can't do one too late. And if you ask people from 2021 to 2024, they'd, might agree with that. And I think a lot of people, when they get into these things, their expectations move, their numbers shift, they start to get a little irrational. And a lot of times they turn down something that they're never going to get again. And so I think it's really good in a quiet time to keep yourself honest, where you said, look, this is what I would want. And this would make me happy. And this is good enough, because there's a more problem that all of us, have around that. And, David Rudinsky once said to me, and he included in his book, and I think he didn't make it clear that it was me, around, like, hey, why would I want to do something? I'm having my best year. And David's like, your best year is always the time to do something.
100%. 100% true.
He's like, I've talked to more people who've said that and then fallen off a cliff afterwards. So I think like I just believe start with the end in mind a lot. So like, what does good look like for me? What do I want for the business and myself and the role and our team and the culture? And what I was really clear was like, I didn't want this thing destroyed that I had spent 15 years building.
Yeah. So I've got a list of questions here, and one of them was why Mountain Gate. I think you answered that. I know you only talked to a few. Did you have other offers economically?
I did. We did.
And were they
the other
all
thing,
about the same?
They were all in the same ballpark. Well, I'll say the other thing, why Mountain Gate, the other two firms, again, really liked them, but they were generalists. And after doing some due diligence, talking to some people, like I Mountain Gate's, experience in marketing services just was so clear and differentiated. I just felt like we were better off with someone who knew our industry really well than a generalist. I mean, and that's been validated by the deal flow they get and the comparisons. And hey, talk to our CFO at this other portfolio company. They're having the same challenge. And so I obviously, I think there are a lot of great generalists out there, but I think we also realize that the specialist, and there's just not a lot that specialize in marketing services at that size.
Right. And I think it's also interesting, you talk about that one pager, and it focused more on the non-economic terms, which makes sense to me, because when you get 3 or 5 or 10 smart people that look at your business, that know the space, they're probably going to coalesce around the same relative value with a little bit of tweaking one side or the other. Would you agree on that?
Yeah. I mean, look, this will lead to our further discussion, but everyone wants to believe they're the exception and their baby's beautiful and someone's going to overpay and do something stupid. And those are all the businesses that don't sell. So yeah, some really smart investors all looked at the business and they all sort of came around a range of this similar value. And that's like, markets are efficient. And all of the, I've now spent 3 years, we've bought 4 businesses. I've looked at hundreds of others, and I can write on a piece of paper and I can tell you after a call whether someone's going to sell their business or not and keep a scorecard, because they're just completely disconnected from market realities and they're focused on their personal needs and beliefs.
That's something I find to be true as well. I want to talk about what it's like being on the other side of the table. But before we do that, when you did this transaction and now you're, the one thing I hear all the time, I'm doing this transaction and now I have a boss and it's not going to be fun. It's not going to be dynamic. It's not going to be exciting. A, did you worry about that? And B, what has it been like since the transaction from that perspective?
Yeah. So this is a little bit like, I hear a lot of people talk about private equity with a blanket a lot of time. And I think a lot of the bad reputation from private equity comes from large buyout firms that buy a single company and strip out the cost and otherwise. Early, and there's larger firms that have these operating teams. And I even know of a private equity firm that plans to replace the CEO in every deal. So this is kind of like saying that marriage is good or bad. Marriage isn't good or bad. Like your partner makes a big difference. So again, Mountain Gate does not have operating partners waiting to take over the job. Like if you look at the firm, if you talk to the references, like replacing a CEO would be like a worst case outcome. And usually they have people, CEOs like me, that might be ready to move more to chairman role, and they work with them on that. Again, everyone has the same incentives. They have that's what people couldn't understand. Like, can you leave? I'm like, yeah, I can leave, but like, why would I want to like? If I wanted to leave, I'm not going to hurt the partnership. I have like a ton of equity in it. Like this is the whole thing. So it comes to how does that look? What the best thing I can say about Mountain Gate is exactly what we thought we were getting, we got. And I can't remember a single time they've told us you should do something. There's a lot of perception that a lot of these private equity are telling the company what to do. Yeah, I'm sure that some have that business philosophy, but most of the middle market growth, they are trying to buy great companies and great teams, and they're there to help that team and support them. Yeah, and if the stuff's going off the rail and you're going to trip covenants, like there's going to be some heavy involvement, but they generally don't want to run your business from what I've seen in this part of the market. Again, maybe different. They don't. Mountain Gate doesn't have operating partners that sit around. The same partners that do the deal are on your board. So different firms have different philosophies. As I said, a friend of mine sold his business to a firm that they replace the CEO with kind of MBAs in every deal, and that's sort of been a disaster from what I can see. But that was their business model, and they were very upfront with it early on.
Yeah, and as long as you're upfront with it, right, then at least the entrepreneur gets to make their choice. All right,
yeah. So now, you should look at the firm. Again, do they have this whole cadre of ex-CEOs waiting for their next gig? That they should be honest about
right?
That. Yeah.
Yeah. So now you've done the so you did that transaction in 2020?
The end of 2020, yeah.
Okay. So now you're into 21 or so, and Mountain Gate is like a lot of private equity firms. They're not looking to cut costs to grow. They're looking to add capability and size, right. And so can you just? And then you've acquired 3 businesses, right, so far?
Yeah, 4, and yeah, I was just at Mountain Gate's annual meeting, and most of their firms, I actually see an EBITDA reduction in year 1 because of investments. Like, look, what do we need to do? What do we need to invest? Let's build out the team. Let's clean up the tech. Like, let's. They're playing the long game, not the short game. Again, it's not let's come in and strip out cost. You're trying to triple a business over 5 years. You don't triple a business by cutting costs.
Right. So step number 1, when we think about in my mind, you sit in the boardroom, you with your new board members, and you talk about, we have a checkbook here. So if we're going to add capabilities or add businesses or add whatever, what do we go after? Can you talk a little bit about what those conversations were like?
So Mountain Gate has a playbook that they're pretty proud of. And one of the first things in the playbook that we typically do, and a lot of private equity firms do this, like we did a pretty big strategy project with Winterberry Group, like a market intelligence discovery group. And we looked at our clients and the customer reviews, and they've been part of due diligence. And what do other clients want to buy from us and where the market's going? And we kind of came back with a plan, and then we were able to say, okay, what do we want to build, and what do we want to buy, and how do we want to do that? And so that plan that took a lot of time to put together up front, but it kind of got everyone on the same page of what we were looking to do and where we were looking to grow and strategically.
I hope you loved that interview with Robert Glazer from Acceleration Partners. Really touched on a lot of great points in terms of how you partner with private equity, the importance of a good private equity relationship. In the second half of this interview, Robert's going to talk about how to set proper expectations for a transaction. He talks a lot about window of opportunity and what that means to entrepreneurs. And then he also describes life after the transaction. how he's grown the business, how he's partnered with his private equity group. And I think you'll really gain a lot from the second half of this interview as well. So thanks to our sponsors at Fiscal Advocate. You may want to go back and check some of the other episodes that I mentioned with Grayson LaFrance and Kevin Biondi. Definitely want to check out the PE Insight series because there's a lot of good insight about partnering with private equity there. Thanks for listening to the Second Bite podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Second Bite podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.